Good morning, everyone. Welcome. As Hilary says, it's never tiring to stop seeing everyone coming into the chat. It's like just a energizing moment every morning. It's been a pleasure to be with you every morning this week, and thank you so much to Ayala for this beautiful guidance and gentle practice that we've all been having this week, and thank you to all for holding the space. This is our last day of daily meditation with Ayala. She will be back at Sangha Live at some point. I'm not sure the dates yet, but we'll be happy to receive her again. And if you would like to, follow what Ayala is doing, you can visit her website, ayalagill.com. I'll post the link in the chat in a moment. And yeah, she's got various offerings. She's also teaching a retreat at Martin Center, Moulin de Chave in October. So if anyone's interested in that, all the information is on her website. It's also on the Moulin de Chave website. And you can also subscribe to her Substack, which for those of you who don't know, it's a kind of online newsletter platform, and receive, I think, weekly emails from her of her writings. All right, so today we'll run the same as every day this week. We'll have a short talk, guided practice, and then there's time for questions and answers. We do have a few questions left over from yesterday. I think there were about 4, so Ayala will start with those. And if there's anything that comes up after that and there isn't time to cover it in our session, Ayala will send me those answers by email, and I'll post them in the Sangha Live Connect space so everyone can have access. All right. As you know, these sessions are all run on dana basis. If you don't know, dana is the principle of mutual generosity that's been practiced in Buddhism for 3,000 years now, as a way of the wisdom teachings, the Dharma being disseminated, and the community, the practitioners, supporting that dissemination through financial contributions. So it's quite a radical practice in today's world, I would say. Most of the time we're looking at things and we're considering, how much is this worth? You know, how much can I get for my money, basically. Especially now with the economy right now, we kind of have to do that. It's a survival skill. But the dana is a total different invitation. It's to feel what is the generosity arising in me? How do I want to give? And then to match that with the practical kind of situation in our lives of how much can I actually give? What is my income situation? So invitation to remember to feel first, to not start with how much is this worth, but to feel, what is that impulse for generosity in me? And then match that with your practical circumstances. So if you would like to donate today, today's the last day to donate in order to support Ayala as well, to contribute for her teachings. So up until the midnight today, British time. You can donate on sangha.live/donate, and I'll post the link in the chat as well. Okay, thank you everyone, and enjoy your practice.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I agree with your comment of the joy of watching you all arrive. It's been a real gift this week. So let's, as we have been doing each morning, let's just spend a few moments as people are coming in to pause ourselves and feel each other beyond the kind of icon on the screen, to just feel this truth that around the world, in all these different parts of the world, each of us in our full-bodied presence, sitting here in our own homes or our own environments, bones and flesh, on a cushion or a chair, tender, opening heart, curious, opening mind. Feeling each of us, and you feel yourself creating together, weaving together this energetic field of Sangha, remembering together, as we have been doing this week, the sacredness, the essential sacredness of all things. So we've been practicing together this week to remember, recognize, rest in, and respond from sacredness. And we've been remembering to establish the body and our posture as a container, a vessel, a receptacle for this expression of sacredness. We've been experiencing our breathing in a way that is not something we take or even observe, but a mystery that we participate in, that we receive and give back. A mystery, a dance, a universal dance of life. And we've been experiencing and receiving mind also as something more than the often compulsive, obsessive, neurotic thoughts, thinking patterns. Experiencing mind instead as a much wider field of luminous intelligence, including the intelligence of the body, the intelligence of the heart, the intelligence of nature, the intelligence all around us in this shared field of aliveness. So much more that we can draw from in our lives. And we've been experiencing emotions even as sacred. The way in which when we learn that it's possible to no longer be in the reactive defaults of suppressing or embellishing emotions, that there's a sacredness that arises when we rest beside what's here. And we witness the naturalness of love's response. And this is something that is really worthy of paying attention to, the naturalness of love's response when we rest in sacredness, when we recognize sacredness, when we rest close to experience. There's a naturalness of the way in which, as the Buddha has described, the different flavors of love that naturally respond to this moment depending on its conditions. Metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. So the metta is this intrinsic warmth that warmth and curiosity that we've been cultivating consciously as our first movement when we turn towards this moment. These qualities of wonder and awe, of tenderness and reverence, that create a field of metta, that create a field of luminous warmth. And when this luminous warmth meets pain, discomfort, suffering, it naturally responds with karuna, with compassion. And although the English word compassion can be literally translated as to suffer with, this luminous warmth of love's appropriate response doesn't in fact suffer with our suffering. Because as we've been exploring, suffering itself arises when we become into a distorted relationship with pain, when we either suppress it or embellish it. It's an added layer to the pain that's already here. So compassion is the capacity to rest beside pain, to rest beside suffering, without losing ourselves in the patterns of either suppressing or embellishing. Rest beside whilst remaining in absolute recognition of the sacredness of this too. And so that compassionate embrace can be one that we hold for others, but only when we learn to hold that place inside ourselves with our own pain. And we do that by coming into sacredness, by recognizing the sacredness of this moment. And when this luminous warmth comes into contact with the natural joy of this moment, it responds with mudita, the very natural delight, a delight that isn't caught up with holding on, with trying to manage and maintain this moment, with grasping, that allows it to blossom in its fullness of delight, knowing that this too will change. And so this flavor of upekkha is always present. Again, upekkha is often translated, is usually translated as equanimity, but equanimity can sometimes be also understood in a more contracted way, like I must be equanimous with this discomfort in a kind of gritted teeth way. I'm going to grit my teeth and stay with it because I'm trying to cultivate equanimity. So instead, equanimity, the sacredness of its expression can be felt more when we experience it as a spaciousness, just an ease, a spaciousness that holds this ongoing flux and flow of love's response, of the sacredness of this moment. A spaciousness that, again, has no compulsion to cling to either the sweetness or the pain of this moment. So we will be, I'll be inviting you to notice and allow and celebrate the naturalness of these appropriate responses. The word appropriate response makes me think of, some of you might know the Zen story. As a 10th century Zen monk called Yunman, who it said he was asked, what is the highest and most profound teaching of all the Buddhas and the patriarchs? What is the highest and most profound teaching of all the Buddhas and the patriarchs? And his response was, the highest and most profound teaching of all the Buddhas and the patriarchs is an appropriate statement. So beautiful. An appropriate statement is flexible and adaptive to this moment. It's always, there's no one thing that is the right thing to arise at any time. But it always has at its heart the intention to be of greatest benefit to all beings everywhere. And so an appropriate response is the same. Love's appropriate response arises in the same way, utterly flexible and adaptive, but at its heart, the intention to be of greatest benefit to all beings everywhere. And so another thing that I'll say before we come to practice is, what is it that comes to distort the naturalness of appropriate response. And one of the ways we can begin to notice the kind of first level of our own distortions that we bring in to kind of contract around, to collapse the naturalness of appropriate response, of love's appropriate response, is to begin to notice what our defaults are. What is your default when you first come into a space? What is your default when you first come to sit in meditation? Is your default to notice what's wrong? What's not okay? When you first enter a party, a new space, is your default to notice what's not okay? What could be better? What could be fixed and improved? Is your default when you come into meditation instead to notice how you could be more comfortable, to get what you need, to shift this, to change this, to establish your comfort and supports and safety? Is your default when you enter a party, a new space, to figure out like, where's the food and the comfortable chair? Is your default instead when you come into meditation to kind of check out, to go to your more comfortable place out there, elsewhere, your familiar place out there, elsewhere, to be a bit spacey? Is your default when you enter a new room, a party, a space, to be in your own kind of slightly your own party inside your head, inside your field, that safest place of disappearing? Is your default to be distracted, to go on your phone? And so what I'm describing here, some of you may recognize, are these three defaults that Martin so beautifully describes as demanding, defending, distracting. Where do we tend to go? And what I'd like to draw your attention to even more succinctly, that I am beginning to notice behind any of these defaults, is a very young voice that is saying, am I okay? Am I okay? So when we come to sit together now, it can be a fast track to recognize our tendencies and to come straight to this question, to allow this question to arise inside us, to hear the little one saying, am I okay? And so that we begin straight away with this sigh and this response that, yes, my love, you are absolutely unconditionally okay right now with me. So it's a kind of fast track to the naturalness of love's response. So let's begin. Establishing your posture. Exhaling to invite ease through the tissues, the muscles, especially of the face, the jaw. allowing your exhalation to travel down into the legs, to the ground. Feeling how the ground holds you. And allowing yourself to be received. Feeling the inhalation as it lengthens your spine and opens around your heart. Your presence awake and receptive. And the feeling of spaciousness, balancing with the inhale and the exhale. A spaciousness inside you. And a spaciousness all around you. A spaciousness that isn't empty and cold, but alive with luminous intelligence, infused with warmth. A spaciousness, in other words, that holds you profoundly beyond the cognition of your mind. That both holds you and is you. And as you attend to the breathing as your anchor, and some of you might prefer anchoring your attention with the movement and the changing nature of sound. Letting this anchor be a gentle reminder that presence lives here. That sacredness is alive and showing itself right here. Each time you notice your attention has wandered off in one of the familiar pathways of demanding, defending, distracting, of inwardly fussing with what you need, judging, fixing what's arising inwardly or outwardly, or wandering off elsewhere. With such tenderness, gently unhook. And as you drop your attention within, notice if there's a voice very quietly asking, "Am I okay?" Am I okay? And yes, my love, you are absolutely, unconditionally okay. You're okay. Feeling it, the naturalness of love's response. You're okay. Behind the words okay are the many flavors of suffering. Am I lovable? Am I safe? Do I belong? Am I valued? Am I seen? Am I heard? Am I okay? Yes, my love, you are absolutely, unconditionally okay. There may be moments that you experience yourself simultaneously as the young one, wanting to know if he or she is okay, and the love which responds. Recognize the spaciousness and warmth of the luminous intelligence which embraces this moment when we relax our defaults of demanding, defending, or distracting, and reveal the vulnerability am I okay? Experience yourself as this love which responds. This too is who you are. Sacred. Am I okay? Yes, my love, you are absolutely, unconditionally okay. You are this love. You're just remembering. As we prepare to end this meditation, feel once again the spaciousness and warmth of the luminous intelligence around you and within you. And sense this field of spaciousness, warmth, and luminous intelligence that extends between us, beyond time and space. This field which reminds us that the very same defaults and movements that we recognize within ourselves are alive in others too. And sometimes more entrenched And yet, even in those very calcified defaults, there's still a very quiet young one whispering inside, other people too. Am I okay? As we recognize and release these defaults again and again and again within ourselves, as we recognize and celebrate the naturalness of love's response, we find ourselves increasingly able to recognize these same patterns in others. And to allow love's response to travel directly to the place within them that hurts. To allow for the naturalness of a response that at its heart has the intention to bring the greatest benefit to all beings everywhere, quite naturally. So thank you all for your presence, for your sweetness during this week. It's been a real, genuine pleasure to be here for me. I look forward to coming back when that happens, and I look forward to staying in touch with any of you who would like to stay in touch with me. As Faith said, you can have a look at my website and subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. I'd love to see some of you at the Moulin de Chave this October. We'll be in silence and practicing meditation through the day, as well as an active yoga practice in the morning, Iyengar based, and a passive yin yoga practice in the afternoons, as well as time in nature, the different ways that we really contact sacredness and meet all its flavors and expressions. You can also email me at ayalagill@gmail.com with any other questions that you might have, as some of you have done. And so I will respond to any questions I don't have time to come to today. I'll return them to Faith, and she'll post them on the in the group form. I want to respond to some of the questions I didn't have time to respond to yesterday first. So there's a question here from Natalie. Ayala, I was able to meet and hold with kindness a young feeling of sadness. However, at some point it felt too much, so I came back to the breath in the belly. Can you say something about this? So yeah, that's absolutely in that moment. It sounds like that was your appropriate response. There's a wisdom, there's a body wisdom that we have, a wisdom of our being that knows the cycle of healing, which has been described as one that arises in a kind of like an infinity wave, that we move into the healing space and then we move into safety and we move back into the healing space, especially I'm talking about where there's been trauma. So we kind of loop into the trauma and then back into safety, and loop into trauma and back into safety. And that looping happens dependent also on our conditions. So we need to feel safe enough to enter that space and come back for breath and enter that space. So in any moment, whether it's in our own practice, there might be that rhythm happening, that we come back and establish ourselves in the breath and the belly, in our presence. Because remember, it's only helpful to turn towards what is painful when we are able to remain anchored in sacredness, in presence. It's the difference that I was describing between compassion and compassion being resting beside what hurts, and compassion being suffering with, which can actually reinforce the trauma because we are losing ourselves. Again, we're losing ourselves inside it. So resting beside requires some capacity to remain connected to the love which knows this. So whether that's through our own practice that brings us back to presence in the belly, whether that's through the mirror of a friend or a therapist or a mentor or guide who holds that space for us, where we can dip in and come back into safety. So I hope that makes sense. There's many ways that we can support that healing process. And what we want is to be able to feel the grief without drowning inside it. To feel it, to host it, to feel it fully, and trusting completely that in being with love's response to grief, the courage that grows in us, there's a reverence that begins to become more alive in us as we remain steady in the presence of grief. There's another question here from Kathy, who asked yesterday, if what one is feeling is a sense of regret, guilt, or shame, is this approach appropriate? Absolutely. So any feeling can be met in this way. And we can relate to regret, guilt, and shame as feelings as well, because they are, as well as being narratives, they're also feelings in the body. Where they are unhelpful is when we get lost in the narratives, which I was calling yesterday embellishing, or when we suppress them. There's another factor here that might be helpful to point out, which is that there's a difference, there's a very important difference between regret on one hand and guilt and shame on the other. Because regret is the recognition that something I did, I now feel is not okay, which is a really healthy recognition, because apart from anything else, it shows that we're learning and growing. How wonderful. If I didn't have regrets, like there would be no evolution here. So regret is in a way saying, if I'd have known better then I would have done better. But that was what I needed to come to this place of growth, so that now I know. That journey, often meeting the suffering, the friction of whatever it is that we regret, is probably part of the journey that took you to this moment of recognizing, that wasn't so helpful. But guilt and shame, on the other hand, are much more punishing, because instead of saying, what I recognize that what I did wasn't helpful, guilt and shame say that who I am is not okay. Such an important distinction there. And so with guilt and shame, it's so important to unhook from the story that is calcified around the absolute belief that who I am is not okay. To come into the body and meet them as contractions and collapse, places of contraction and collapse in the body, so that then we can meet and begin to see the youngness, the young part of us that is saying, am I okay? Because I don't think I'm okay. Am I okay? So the practice, in other words, is still the same, in that we unhook from the narratives, we come into the body, we find what this feeling feels like here in the body, and we hold that with so much love. Yes, my love, you are absolutely okay. There are a few more questions from yesterday, and I can see there are a few questions from today, but I'm also aware of the time, and so I don't want to hurry any of these questions. So I will respond to them in writing, and Faith will share them. And any of you who have more personal questions that you'd like to ask me, feel free to email me, ayalagill@gmail.com. And I'd just like to repeat my gratitude for your support, not only in your presence, but also with Dana. I will wholeheartedly endorse what Faith was saying about how important I feel Dana to be in this time that we're living in, that is so focused on getting what I think I need and getting a good deal and getting and holding on. That Dana is the way that I offer all of my work where possible, which is in fact all of my work. When I work in some of my workshops, they don't operate in a way that is Dana, so we have a sliding scale, which is as close as we can get. And I just find it so profoundly rewarding to be supported in this way, that everything I receive feels like a gift and is a full expression of each individual's felt sense into what they have, an expression of what they feel they've received, and where that meets the reality of their conditions. So I love that, for example, on my retreats, I'm supported by Dana, and there's such a range in what I receive that feels so appropriate. And so I just thank you in advance, and thank you, Faith, also for pointing out that if you would like to support me through Sangha Live, then that would be up until tonight, Friday evening. So if you're watching the recordings at another time, please still support Sangha Live. But if you'd like to support me beyond Friday midnight, again, feel free to email me and I can give you ways that you can do that. So once again, let's just take a moment to come back into ourselves, into this field that we create with each other, and so much gratitude for this space that we hold, for this space that each of you have created, for the energy and the presence that each of you have given. So much gratitude for the commitment to wake up and grow up and show up each day. And our commitment to remembering and resting in and responding from sacredness. And may all beings everywhere benefit from the mystery of this unfolding. So thank you.